What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fit, Healthy, and most of all, Happy podcast. I'm your coach and host, Josh, here with
his co-host and co-coach, KG, and I'm in the house.
and this is Motivation Monday. We're here to get you fired up, inspired, and equipped for an amazing week ahead. So grab a coffee, sit back, relax. Let's get you motivated and educated through this episode. And we're going to start the Motivation Monday as we always do with our first question out of the mailbag. And this is a really fun question. So I'm actually pumped to jump into it. So the question is, I've always been curious if the biggest people in the gym are on steroids. How do you know? So I love this question because I've always had more, I guess, of a pure mind where I assume most people aren't on steroids outside of the really crazy, just extreme cases. But when you actually look at like the percentage of people that are using it, or if you're watching those like Vice steroid documentaries on YouTube, it appears to be more prevalent. And I think more than ever, it's getting more prevalent, which is pretty tough. And there's a lot of different weeds we can get into with this. And obviously we've been in the industry for a while and it's not the side we've been in. We've stayed to the natural side. So I don't know as much about that side of the world. But I've definitely had some unique situations. I had a guy come up to me, give me a business card, say, look great, and anything I need, he'll get me. And I'm like, what is this for? He's like, steroids. And I'm like, well, I've never done steroids. I have no desire to do steroids, but I will absolutely take the compliment. Like, that is really impressive. And what's funny is it's such a fun question. I find it such a position of just how the person's thinking. So even obviously being a quote unquote fitness influencer, I get it all the time. Like, hey man, you're on steroids, you're juicing. But the funny thing is I also get all the time, you're tiny, you're skinny. This guy, I'm not listening to this skinny guy lift or talk about lifting. And it's hilarious because of social media, because of editing, because of extreme examples. I think people's expectations are just higher than ever before. There are people that are insanely big, insanely jacked, insanely blessed with genetics. And I think this line of like who's on juice is more blurred ever than before. And I think previously though, also there was a lot of hush hush about it. So the biggest guys would say, no, no, no. Whereas now people are a little bit more honest towards it. So I do find some people, you'll be like, oh yeah, that person talks a lot about it. Like I know some big people that admit to it and talk about it, which is funny. But to this question of how you can know, there are absolutely some surefire ways to tell someone's on it. But what I want to say before I do that is it's really easy to explain away someone's successes because perhaps you're newer to the gym. Perhaps it sucks, but maybe your genetics just suck and it's really hard for you to put on muscle. And there's some people that just anytime they touch a weight, they blow up and they look huge. And perhaps they could be in steroids, but perhaps they could be incredibly genetically blessed. That's a possibility as well. Or perhaps they work really hard. They're doing a lot more behind the scenes you don't know about. And even for me, people say, hey, I see you in your 75 minutes. How do you get a look like that? I'm like, been doing this 13 years. I eat incredibly well. I've been really solid. I've lived to these principles nonstop. I haven't really taken a week off. Like I've put in a lot of work to this. So I'm even guilty of this. Kyle showed me a video of this guy and he had like a Bugatti and a crazy Lamborghini and all these things. And I immediately think like, oh, that guy's got like cartel money or he was gifted this money or he's doing something sketchy. Like it's just easier when you can't comprehend something or it's at a different level than you're at just to put the blame there. But with saying this, there are absolutely people that do take steroids. And like I said, I think the statistics of it are going up more and more. And we'll talk about our own experience of whether we ever plan to do it or if we have done it, even though we just said we were lifetime naturals. But there are a lot of cues here. And the ways I can usually tell, first and foremost, is a common sense test. If a guy's been in the gym, you've seen him 2 years, he's bopping around, you see him, he's making a little to no progress. And then a month later, you see him and the dude just looks like a Greek god. There's your answer, right? You don't just suddenly magically in a month make all these incredible, insane gains and says he's bulking or taking a supplement. That's just not realistic. That is not common sense. If someone is 300 pounds and incredibly lean, they're on steroids. Genetically, that's just not going to happen. Like for perspective, I'm a big person. I'm like 6'1", 6'2", somewhere in there. I'm about 215 pounds, give or take, and I'm like 14% body fat. Like I'm big, but I'm not even relatively close to that big. I'd say I have pretty good genetics. I'm sure people have better genetics than me, but just know that like a lot of these are clues, not facts as to whether someone's taking them. Ultimately, only that person can know, or if you see them injecting or swallowing some unsavory pills, if you will. So first and foremost is that common sense test. Another easy one, and this works for men men and females, and that is the traps, the delts, and the neck area. These are areas that actually just blow up more with steroids, especially with testosterone. So you'll notice that people that are on steroids have super, super full muscles. So their shoulders, their traps, they just look out of this world. They almost look like a comic book villain, if you will. If you're seeing a lot of that, there's a very good chance you're on steroids. Saying so, there are exceptions to this rule. Kyle actually just naturally is leaner and has more mass in these areas, really big delts. And this is where genetics are so intriguing. And that's where you want to look at the body as a whole. And to the point too, veins. If someone's overly vascular, they always look dried out and pumped out of the gills. Like they look like they're pumped all the time. To me, that is the easiest tell. For me, it's hilarious. And when I'm in the gym, I look good. I'd like to say I look good. I get pumped up. But if I'm out of it and you get me in the wrong lighting, I'm not going to look incredibly amazing. Like that's just a reality of a natural. You look very different to when you're pumped and when you're not. Whereas when you're on steroids, your muscles stay a lot more pumped. Your skin's a little bit thinner. You have more just everything kind of through your muscles, if you will, there. And you have more of this 3D look to your muscle. So between all of these, you can usually decipher if someone more is to that. If someone's just big, they're bulked up, maybe they got a little bit of extra fat, but they train heavy, they're consistent, they're eating well, I'd give them the benefit of the doubt, especially if you ask them. And I mean, it's kind of a weird question, but I never really mind because I'm happy to say my piece, hence where I am here. But that is generally the best test to go through it. So common sense test, that area, are they pumped all the time? Vascularity, and then of course acne. If you're seeing an excess amount of acne paired with all the other things, and once again, you can have someone that has a lot of these things that is natural, and it is a blurry line. But once again, like the fitness industry is about helping and encouraging, and I think instead of explaining away people's successes or accusing or worrying about it, I like to focus on my journey, let people do what they want. I personally just don't see it as a competition anymore. We were just at a gym and we're filming a ton of content, what we're really excited about, a ton of amazing reels, ton of YouTube videos, and we're just so pumped up about that. And a lot of people there, it's more of a bodybuilding style gym, so it's definitely more prevalent. And you can see that more people do indeed have this look. And with that, you get more people walking around with their arms out, going sideways through doors, sizing you up, and you get more of that vibe, which is kind of funny. So we saw more of that look. But once again, I just think it's nice to focus on your own lane, to not really mind this, but it is an intriguing way to know, because I find some people just have no clue. And unfortunately, if you're one of those people that thinks the rock is natural, that does not pass the common sense test.
Yeah, that was so well said. And I think a lot of people, they don't realize the difference between like mature muscle mass. So one thing is like, usually you can kind of tell the person who's been there, like maybe they're around 40 or so, they've just been so consistent and they've been lifting for 15 to 25 years, just like very dialed in. Like you can just tell, like even myself, when I look at someone, I'm like, man, you can tell they've been lifting for a while, but it's just mature muscle, nothing crazy where you kind of have to just look at them and be like, are they on steroids? Like I find that the perception of other people, especially if you're newer, you're younger and stuff, you kind of just assume because there's so many people out there using it, especially when you go on TikTok, that's what's being promoted, that's what's being praised. It seems like it's a pretty wild world out there on that note. So you just start assuming like if someone's jacked, you're like, oh, they're on the juice. And I know a lot of times people just think that like, yeah, it's just something that people do and just naturally, you know, especially once again, TikTok, it's like going into a bodybuilder gym. You're just scrolling, you see steroids, at least from what I've seen in my opinion. But yeah, I just think like for me personally, when I see someone and I have to really just question and be like, are they natural? Like since I've been doing this for so long, I really understand it in terms of just like what's actually capable, what you're capable of to your natural limit and all that stuff. Like it's more so kind of just an easier, like quick glance and be like, probably or probably not. Whereas a lot of people is just like, they really don't understand. But yeah, that was a really great question and awesome answer from Coach Josh there.
Yeah, you can get super in the weeds with this. There's actually like a genetic potential test where you'll measure actually how wide your wrists are. I don't know how scientific this is, your height, your weight, and it'll kind of say like where you could head to reasonably at a certain percent body fat and where you are now. Like once again, you can get so in the weeds in it. And like to that point of common sense test, if someone is like an IFBB pro with their pro card, unfortunately, natural or not, that landscape kind of requires you to do that. And people will claim they don't, everyone will, and they'll get popped for it. And they kind of need to be a little bit more shady about it to keep their position. They can't be as vocal. Like a lot of them will ignore it, but some of them will deny it. Anyhow, with that as well, to the common sense test, I love how Kyle mentioned even mature muscle. Like what's fun with me is if you look through my photos, you'll see it's very linear, realistic, natural progress. There aren't these big bumps where I got 50 pounds of muscle outside of my first year when I was just absolutely bulking and I was a teen and I was getting after it. But from there, I've stayed quite consistent. And once again, not to name names or take away from anyone, but I saw someone in the gym today that looked like someone. I'm like, oh, that's not him. That guy's way too skinny, because the guy I know is huge. He's jacked, IFBB pro. He's just like a beast. And then after, Kyle was like, oh, it is him. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And when people are on cycle versus off cycle, they'll look like two different people. On cycle, they'll just look massive and blown up. Off cycle, they'll get more of that natural look. So if you're seeing people swinging like that a lot in the gym, and yes, there's cutting and bulking, but I do find that's a lot more linear. But just for curiosity's sake, these are how you can identify these things. And these are things we've become aware of after 13 years of lifting. So happy to share some insider secrets there. And I thought this was a really fun question. And actually, after we go through our notes as well as our client shoutout, we will be talking about what our thoughts on steroids as a whole are. So I'm really excited to dive into that into a sec. But first, we're going to kick it off with Kyle's quote.
My quote for this week is very simple, but very meaningful. It is, your mind has to be stronger than your feelings. So I'm always talking about mindset, but I just think it's something that is so essential on your fitness journey. And I think a lot of times we can let our feelings overtake what's going on and what we need to do, right? Especially when it comes down to discipline. Most people don't realize a lot of what needs to be done is just based off of like what needs to get done, not how you're feeling, not if you're tired, not if you're stressed. Like it just needs to get done. So I think sometimes, as easy as it sounds, as I'm making it sound, you just have to kind of detach yourself. And I have to do this a lot myself. Like some people don't realize if there's ever a stressful day or if there's something I just like don't want to do, it's just like, it needs to get done. Like even using this podcast, an example, like we love being here. We love talking to you guys. Like we've done almost 700 episodes. We're not going to wake up at all times and just be like, I'm so ready to do this. Like right now we're filming it Friday. It's just a different time. You know, it was a long week. Like we filmed about over 20 YouTube videos in the last few days, like shorts wise, reels wise, YouTube wise. And so it's a lot, right? But it's like, it doesn't matter about your feelings. Like it's what you need to do. And I think that's where so many people struggle is just, they're always thinking about, you know, how they're feeling and stuff. And once again, nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, like you can, acknowledge that and be like, hey, but I still need to get the work done. So that's my quote for today.
Yeah, fantastic quote. And my quote is from Mr. Ronnie Coleman. Mr. Yeah, buddy. If you know what that is, shout out to you. But it is, nutrition is 150% of the bodybuilding formula. It's that important. And I know some people, it's like their ick when anything's over 100%. Like when people say 110% or 101, because they're like, you can only give 100. But I think this quote and the severity of it, how he said 150%, really highlights its importance. And this is someone who I think was six time Mr. Olympia, maybe 5 time, somewhere in there. But Ronnie at his peak was an absolute animal. He was a different beast. Once again, absolutely not natural. That's common sense test for you while we're at it, but still one of the greats. And that also doesn't take away from the incredible work and dedication he has. And once again, it's easy just to explain away these things. And even I was guilty of it. And of course, even from ignorance, I mentioned in the past, there was someone from my high school that was bigger than me. And I'm like, well, he's a cheater. He's on creatine. So it's pretty funny. And it's funny seeing how you can grow and reflect. But nonetheless, I love this component because nutrition is so important. And like you can truly have great nutrition and not train and still have a good physique. You're not going to be jacked or anything, but nutrition, longevity, and healthy, it's just such an important thing of what we're putting into our body each and every day. So if you want to bodybuild, if you want to look phenomenal and you are overlooking nutrition, like you're really shooting yourself in the foot. It's almost impossible. Like you'll gain a little bit of muscle, but you're not going to be happy with where you need to go. And like nutrition doesn't need to be hard. It doesn't need to be difficult. And that's what we built an entire business around. And I think once again, this just really to me highlights its importance. So I was really happy to say that and to share this quote rather. And as we jump into our thoughts, I think this piggybacks pretty nice. And then I was just listening to a new book. I was making a whole new book list for the year. I'm getting really excited, and I didn't really set a learning education goal just yet. So I'm trying to decide if I want to go for the big 52 book challenge again this year. And I'm thinking I might have to do it. So we'll have to see. But I started a new book from Brian Tracy and I absolutely loved it. Can't remember the exact name, but I'll put it in the show notes. But he had mentioned that bad habits are easy to form, but hard to break. Good habits are hard to form, easy to break. And with Kyle, I'll always mention this to him. I'll say, we need to make sure our habits are good because me and him both identify with this. So when we work together, we grab lunch together, we document that lunch, we do all these things. in the past, it's tempting to get something we really like that's ultra tasty. Even for me, I'm lactose intolerant. I'd love to have burrito sauce. It's extra calories. I know me having that each day, it's going to bug my lactose a bit. It's extra calories. So even though I want it, I'm like, I'm not going to make the habit of putting it on. And this is the smallest, tiniest thing, but it's a good point. And to this example, it's very easy to start hitting snooze and to get in a cycle where you're sleeping in and the day's creeping away. And it's very hard to break that, right? It's very hard to break that and make the good habit of actually not sleeping in, but it's easy to break that habit once you do have it. So it's hard. The odds are stacked against you, but I think identifying this and understanding, like Kyle said, your mind has to be stronger than your feelings is so impactful. And I think just reminding yourself this, that I'm going to make these good habits. I'm going to really try to keep them, even though it is hard and easy to break them. I'm not going to waver in my focus as to what needs to get done. And by really leaning towards that, I do find it makes it that much easier. And it actually is like a hack to making it, once again, easier for yourself. Because for me, I've formulated all of these habits and I made things as simple as they can be for me, where I take out a lot of that thought, a lot of that guesswork, and that saves me a lot of struggling.
Yeah, honestly, like if there's one thing you'd focus on, and you should be, is just like your overall habits. And I see the people who are struggling on their journey, it's just really their habits, their day-to-day actions, what they do. If you're crushing it in the gym and your journey, your habits are probably great. You go to the gym consistently, you eat well. If you're not doing well, it's just poor habits. And, you know, you can either, just see results or not. And it's just from everything that you do day to day. But it also, that was great because it kind of ties into like what I was thinking about as I made a recent reels, just about how most people need support on their journey. I think a lot of times it's scary and uncomfortable to ask for help. I used to let my ego get in the way for specific things. And as we've developed as like a business and just like really, you know, now having kids and just like focusing on what's most important, time is the most valuable thing you'll ever have. You'll never get it back. And I think it's so easy for some people to just like try to do everything themselves. And, you know, it doesn't have to be that way. So I use the example of like a plumber because, you know, it's a skilled trade. It's something that like, I just think there's some things around my house I'm like, I could probably figure out if I spent the next few weeks, if I watch YouTube videos, if I did these courses, if I did a lot of stuff, I could find a way at a certain point. But then everything I do day to day, my business will go down. I'm not going to have as much focus for family. I'm going to lose a lot of focus, time, energy, money, and all that stuff. But then I could say that I did that thing. And I relate it to the fitness journey because I know so many people who will be in the exact same spot 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, just because they don't want to reach out for help. So if you ever are someone that's struggling, like join a community near you, join one of our challenges we have going on, find a workout buddy, reach out to us for coaching. Like don't let your ego get in the way because for most people, they will be in the same spot. And I say this with love, like just reach out. We're always happy to help. Even if you follow us on Instagram and you have a question that you might think is silly, like, you know, reach out. We're always going to respond and we're always happy to help you out.
Yeah. And speaking of that, speaking of someone who did reach out, I'm really excited for our next client shout out because this is actually someone who Kyle went to early school with when he was a little kid, which is pretty cool. And when he reached out and I read his message and I was talking with him in the DMs, always feel free to DM us there. We're happy to talk. He was just letting me know some of his pain points. He said, I have all these nice clothes that I can't wear because I'm not where I want to be. I have a new kid. I don't like the direction I'm going in. I'm so focused on this business I'm running. He had every obstacle in his way. And instead of making an excuse, he said, take the hard work for me, guys. Let me get after it. And I told him, I said, man, you're a go-getter. You're a family man. You have a business. You're making steps in life. This is easy now. Just let us guide you and show you the way. And it's amazing to see that he's over 50 pounds down, but I'll let Kyle take it over here.
Yeah, it makes my day to see like someone whose life is fully transformed, you know, his day-to-day energy. Like a lot of people don't realize, especially for people who have kids, like I know it's sometimes hard for them to invest in themselves, especially because, you know, you may think there's something else that you need to put your money towards and whatnot. But I always say like, it's an investment into your family, like your energy levels, how you feel, how you're going to interact, like losing that weight. I even said to someone recently, walking your child down the aisle, especially if you are really overweight, like these are things people don't think about, but the truth is when you invest in yourself like Ryan, his entire life is better. His, his partner, everything's just in such a better spot because he's focusing on himself, because he's spending time on himself. And this is something a lot of people don't realize. They just put it to the side, and then years goes by and you just unfortunately don't feel your best. So we're so happy to be showcasing Ryan here, especially someone that I knew personally growing up. Like, it was time for him. He needed that support. He needed that change. And like I said, like, it can be hard, especially guys, like, we are quite stubborn and we just want to try, fail, and then, just say, hey, well, at least I did it on my own, but you don't get anywhere. So we're so proud of Ryan. And I'm really happy to showcase him for today's shout out.
Yeah, I'm fired up with Ryan. I'm really proud of what he's done. Great stuff. And especially because, like Kyle said, he's proximal to us. He's not too far away. And there's dozens, if not hundreds of people in my life where I'm like, I can help you so easily. Just like it'd be like me at home, like Kyle said, and I'd have this crazy leak in my sink and I just got to think, I got to figure out how to fix this. And day after day, year after year, I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. When there's literally like, I could Google plumber near me and just have that done in a day. And that's how we very much feel about fitness and health. And we want to do something fun. Me and Kyle were talking. We haven't done this in a bit. And we want to do a specific case study to those of you that have a lot of fat to lose, that have tried everything before, that nothing works. We're going to show you exactly what works, fully guaranteed your results or your money back. No caveats, nothing there. And within that, if you have 25 to 100 pounds to lose, we want to help you do that this year, one-on-one with our coaching for a little case study, especially. So this is going to be a fat loss case study. So if you have a lot of fat to lose, you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, let us show you that this doesn't need to be difficult. Let me do all the hard work, give you the instruction, support, and accountability you need to see this through. So for this little special case study, we're going to give you a special opportunity to get started at a great deal. So I'm going to limit this to 4 people for this specific case study. So if you want to take advantage of this, as soon as you hear it, don't waste any time. Message me on my Instagram at ColossusFit, COLOSSUSFIT, with this keyword fat loss. Let me know how much it is you're looking to lose, and let's get this done together. So I'm really excited about this. Don't keep putting this off. Let today be the day you start. The best time to start was yesterday. The next best time is today. But now we're going to go into our second question. And once again, this is something that I actually asked here is, what are your thoughts on steroid usage? We haven't done this in a while. We've done this in YouTube. I find it always does well because people are always curious about it. And it's funny, I was at Universal in Florida and I was just getting a coffee at Starbucks. And there were 3 kids in front of me, just typical looking dudes, just tall, skinny bros that probably are like 4, I think they were 13, 15, and 16, something like that. Because I overheard them talking and they were saying, I can't put on weight. Nothing works. I can't put on weight. I need steroids. I know you have some. Can you just give it to me? And this is what like the 14-year-old was saying. And the guy's like, bro, you don't need to be doing this. Like, trust me, do it when you're older like me. Then you can do it. Like, you just need to stop eating sugar. That's why you're not gaining weight. And it's so funny because it was so ridiculous to me as someone who's like, oh my gosh, children, like, what are you guys talking about? You guys know nothing. But like I said, I was that same stupid kid that thought creatine was cheating and I didn't understand how something worked. And my thoughts on steroid usage is, I don't really care if someone's been lifting for a while. I think people need to earn it. Like, if you just take it as a catch-all, fix-all, I'm going to look better, I guarantee you you'll look worse. Like, unfortunately, there's some people that it's obvious they're taking it, their nutrition isn't there, they don't have mature muscle, and it's a weird look. Like, you can look so good naturally, and when you've reached that genetic potential, if you want to make that choice and you want to jeopardize your health, that's a decision for you to make. It's not personally one I personally want to make. Even for me, like I said, I'm a relatively large person. It's a lot of weight to carry around each day, and I like working within the confines I have. I find I'm at a nice difficulty level where I'm still trying to progress, albeit very slowly. I'm still progressing, and that's somewhere I personally am quite happy. But what kills me is now I find on social media, TikTok especially, people are very abundant about this, and it's super common. It's like, here's me taking Anavar, here's me taking tests, like very intense steroids that like are just so detrimental to people that they're these kids that are just little kids. They just need to eat more food. That's all they need to do, and let puberty do its thing. And naturally their testosterone is going to shoot up. But by them doing this and jumping to these crazy things, and I think you can get in a whole tanglement of weeds about like body image issues and why this is happening. But like, it's just so unfortunate to me because even that kid, it's like, listen, your mom's going to cook you an amazing meal, ask her for double it. Say, double my dinner every day, eat your breakfast, pack an extra 2 snacks. Like, this is what I did in high school. You put on so much weight, super healthy, super easy. Start training as you're growing, and they're going to look insane. People are going to be like, oh, to be that age again, it's so easy to look good. So it's so unfortunate that people are just jumping to this thing and potentially doing irreversible hormonal damage to themselves. So I really think it's unfortunate with that, and I'm sad, especially when I know what amazing things people can do naturally, how good they can look naturally. And I think it's a quick cop out. And I think people, once again, when you want something, especially nowadays, you want it now. So it's more tempting of something like this, but that isn't naturally going to do it. What a steroid will do is it'll help you eat more, maintain a lower body fat. Will help you put on more muscle easily. So all amazing things, but if your nutrition still sucks, you're still not training hard, like, you're going to really get a small margin of that benefit. And there's so many associated health risks. Even I just think it's really unfortunate. Me and Kyle obviously been doing this about 10 years. So when we started, there's a lot of bodybuilders coming up, massive, just freaks, like these dudes, like I remember Boston Lloyd. There's a bunch of them, and unfortunately, like, a lot of these guys are dying in like the 30s, and it's just like, oh, is that trade-off worth it to me? So I look at it more from the health side, and I think even hearing that, I was just like, oh man, this is sad. And I'm like, I'm not going to unfortunately change these kids' mind, but like, obviously people that are closer to me, I've had these conversations, and I think I've steered people towards just embracing more hard work and seeing what they can do. And it's funny too, like, people will think, like, especially young men in that sense, and I think it's more prevalent with men, less with women, but usually we always joke, like, the leaner and better you look, like, it's usually dudes complimenting you, not girls. Like, sometimes it almost looks ridiculous, like, when you're more lean and people want more of a quote unquote natural look. So I think people are doing it for all the wrong reasons, for the wrong ends, and I think they should just focus on training hard, eating healthy, and seeing improvement.
I think so many people are looking for that quick result, and a lot of it right now is due to the influence online, like I was saying before, with just like TikTok and online media and stuff. Like, I think years ago it wasn't as prevalent. Like, I think people would kind of be hiding it a little bit more, and they would never talk about it, and sponsors never wanted them to talk about it. But now it just seems like, especially in the younger age, like, with TikTok being around, it's more of a younger demographic, in my opinion. I don't know what the age is, let's say 17 to 21, just as an example, or 16 to 21, or maybe even the ages that Josh was talking about for those other kids. Like, I know for a fact they were watching Sam Sulek, they were watching these guys who just like pin a lot every day, and they're just like, man, I just want to be like that. And like, you're gonna regret it. But it's one of those things, like, I like to ask the question why, right? So if someone were to be in front of me, let's have this discussion, and they were to say, I really want to be a pro bodybuilder. I've been lifting for 12 years and, it's time. This is going to help my business grow. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, they know the risks. If they do, I'd obviously talk about that. But I think, like, there's some people, like, it just, they do their thing, and that's what they're going to do, and it's their business, and it's their whatever. But it's like those people who are like just younger, or who just want to be a little bit bigger, or who maybe even have some insecurity issues. I know that that's another big thing, is like, people are natural and you've just been lifting for a while, and you just say, you know what, enough is enough. I want to be way bigger, and I want to be the biggest person in the gym, or whatever it is. Like, people start doing it for that reason. But yeah, I just asked, like, why. And it's just one of those things where most people won't be able to answer, but there are some that just decide to, and it's like, hey, you know what, like, it's their livelihood. They've got, they want to be a pro bodybuilder, like, whatever the case is, like, hey, you do you. But yeah, for the most part, even just, I know from seeing the way people are, and especially guys, like, if you're really heavily into the gym, most people have obsessive personalities. So there will be some who will say, hey, I'm going to take a little bit of low dose. I'm just going to take a tiny bit of stuff. And then, like Josh was saying, they start falling off, just dying, because they just get so obsessed with it. And it starts with one thing, leads to another, leads to another. If you open that floodgate, like, it could be a bad thing. So yeah, I just think it's, for most people, I would say it just makes absolutely no sense. I'd say there's a few where it's like, hey, you know what? And the last thing I'll say is, like, even someone like Christian Guzman, who started to take it to get his pro card and all this other stuff, like, most people are asking him, like, why? Like, what's the point? Like, you've already built such an incredible just livelihood, like the gym you built, the YouTube, like, everything that you have here. And now he was just getting so big, you could tell he was out of breath from every single thing he would do. And it was just kind of like a question of, like, what's the point of this? And it was one of his big goals to be a pro or whatever, but it was just like, I think he realized it just wasn't worth it. And it's just, why ruin all my health and everything just for this one specific goal when there's so many other things he could chase. But yeah, that's my last thought on it, and hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and you can get real in the weeds about this. Like Kyle said, it is tough too, because even I know people at the gym that said they took stuff, and now like whenever he meets a girl, I say, hey, I can't really have kids because I did some irreversible damage. And this is an extreme thing, and I'm sure someone's pulling their hair right now who does not reasonably take steroid, but actually educates himself and does all their blood hormones and does all these things. Once again, I'm not overly familiar with these worlds, but I think you need to be very well of what are the risks, what you're taking, what are the dosages. But to Kyle's point, I like that idea of like, what's the string? Where is this leading me? Where's this path going? And if you do have an obsessive personality too, if like I look amazing for a period of time, then I start looking like crap, I'm just naturally gonna be like more, right? Like, and that to me is just like not worth it. I like working with what I'm in. Now, what I don't have a problem with is when you get older, your testosterone goes down, you get to really low levels of testosterone, especially like late 40s and onwards men, TRT replacement. I mean, I've had a lot of clients have phenomenal success with that. It's been something balanced. It's done through a doctor. It's all done well in that regard. And these are people where your testosterone is naturally starting to fall. I think it starts to drop around 30 and goes downward from there. But that's my point too. Like 20s, early 30s, when people are taking this, they're pretty safe. They're pretty high levels of test. They're in their peak of their time. Like just embrace that. And later on, you can focus more on these other things. But once again, we go more in the weeds in this. If this was enjoyable, it's kind of fun just sharing our thoughts. There's no definitive answers here, but obviously we've been around this. We've talked about this. But last but not least, and this one's going to go out to Kyle. So I really want to improve with my stretching, but I can never find a good time to actually get it done. When do you advise I do it, and what do you tell your clients?
Stretching is going to be honestly when it's most convenient for you. So one of the biggest myths is people think they need to do it directly after a workout. Now, if you have a few extra minutes, I would rather you use it for a cool down. So just using a bike or the treadmill for a few minutes, and that's been proven to help you with better recovery. But stretching, honestly, like whether it's having your arm across your chest, doing maybe even mobility could be classified as that. Any sort of stretching that you want to do, I would just say later on in the day. Like to me, it's just the most convenient. You might be watching a show, you might just be chilling out in your living room. And I know it may sound weird for some people, but I think that would be the best. And, you know, on that note of going to the gym and doing it, like most people get so caught up of having to be there forever. Like you have a big warm up, you have a big, lift session, then you have to cool down and stretch and then do all this stuff. So to me, and there's numerous studies that show like you do not need to stretch after a workout. That's a very common myth. So maybe I'll make a full video on that actually, because it's something I still see so many people doing and believing. But just like most things I say, like when's the best time to take creatine, when's the best time to stretch, when's the best time to work out, whatever works best for you, whenever you're going to stay consistent with it and you're actually going to get it done. And that's my final answer for that one.
Yeah, and a lot of people beat themselves up about stretching because it's hard. It's hard to lift, do abs, do cardio, eat well, all these things. So one thing I like to remind people, when you're working out and you're working in full ranges of motion, you're stressing that muscle and you're stretching that muscle under load. That's why if you actually lift correctly, you'll actually become decently mobile as a result of it. And it's actually something that's self-sustaining. It's not to say that I should never stretch. I absolutely should. But to me, like you do need to remind yourself of some of those small wins. And then obviously too, like there's some things that'll be worse. If you're sitting all day, you should definitely stretch out those hips. You should really work on that low back. You should really build that flexibility against what you're doing. If you have an area that's really like beating you up or sore, like really preventing you from seeing progress you want. But like Kyle said, I think like I've had the best stretching routines doing it before bed. Doing it with sports is another phenomenal one at the end of your workout. You definitely don't want to be doing it at the start of your workout. Any static stretches, just dynamics. But in general, if you want to build a routine, start with 5 minutes, just do a few you enjoy, try to get a little bit more mobile with them, perhaps do it at the end of your workout and make it a priority. And my advice is the same as everything else. Schedule it in and you will get it done. Have some accountability to it. But once again, if you want to lose 25 to 100 pounds this year and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, let us end that for you. DM me on Instagram, the keyword fat loss. I will change your life. And I want this to be your aha moment, your movie star moment. You know, when you're watching a movie and nothing's going right for that character and everything changes and they become a superhero. This is your time. Let us take that hard work away from you. Message me fat loss. 4 spots available for this case study. It's going to be a special little opportunity, and we look forward to helping you achieve this. Thank you for tuning in today. This was a really fun question. If you want to submit a question, you want to see what we're up to, anything, head over to our Instagram. This is the best way to keep up with us, to get more visuals. You can also check out Ryan's transformation, so please show him some love there. At Colossus Fit, we'll also link it so you can click it, and it's super nice and easy. But thanks for tuning in today. Peace out.